Welcome back to Real Life Answers. My name is Ben, and this is Jesus on Culture. Welcome to Jesus on Culture, where we take one of today's top cultural issues and discuss it in a series. This series involves two pastors, Dan Bannister, pastor of Grace Alive Church in Ontario, California, and Bob Bannister, pastor of First Baptist Church Springfield, Louisiana. We'll be discussing issues such as, should Christians be involved in social justice? Is racism a sin? What is white privilege? Does it actually exist? God bless you. Have a great day. And here is Jesus on Culture.
Our final stop this evening is in politics. Often the prophets give us guidance on true justice. Zechariah gives us a word from God that sheds light in our context. And this is Zechariah's passage in the 7th chapter, verses 9 to 10. It says, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, execute true justice." Mishpat is the Hebrew word. "Show mercy and compassion, everyone to his brother. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the alien or the poor. Let none of you plan evil in his heart against his brother." Again, in Timothy Keller's book, he says, the mishpat, or justice of society, according to the Bible, is evaluated by how it treats these groups. And the groups he's referring to are the widows, the fatherless, the aliens, the poor, the refugee, the migrant worker, the homeless, many single parents, and the elderly. Pastor, how can our country improve justice for the Black community?
So, there are certainly a lot of solutions that are being tossed around right now for ways that the country can seek justice for the Black community. And I think that it's important for people like you and me who are not Black to listen to what the Black community is asking for. I've not lived the Black experience as much as I sympathize and empathize and have a love for people, for my brothers and sisters in the Black community. I've never lived the Black experience. And so I don't think it's a good idea for me to be the one to come up with all of to paint a bunch of solutions. So I think the first solution is that as Christians, we need to listen to what the Black community is asking for. And I think that we need to seriously examine some of those things. And we've got a lot of people that are coming out with, and when we talk about the Black community, we've got a lot of people within the Black community that are suggesting a number of different solutions. And so I think that those things need to be examined. I think that when it comes to voting, we need to ask the question, how do these issues impact people of color? And so we're going to look at things like that. I think that we need to seek justice within our law enforcement system. I think that looking at our education system, look first at systems where we see discrimination and partiality being shown, and then we need to look for ways to see those systems reformed. Now, I want to be very careful here, and I don't want to come out and some people will automatically want to throw out all talk of reform because they've heard some unhelpful things about the way that reform should be carried out. I want to be careful about diving too deeply into politics because I think as a Christian and as a pastor, I want to ground myself in what the Bible expressly says. And so I think that we've got to, that means that a lot of the talk about solutions. So the Bible expressly teaches me that Black lives matter and that I need to uphold and seek justice for the Black community. It doesn't necessarily speak about exactly what that's going to look like with regard to specific political solutions. I will say that the idea of police reform, I think, is a good one. I will say that the idea of completely defunding and abolishing I'm sorry?
I said Baton Rouge has already taken a step forward in that, so I was excited to see that. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
That's good. But I want to contrast that by saying that the idea of completely defunding and abolishing the police, I think, is an unhelpful idea. Nobody wants to live in a society without any form of policing. And
don't go anywhere, guys.
so I think that we need to examine the different solutions. And here's the thing. The term defund the police actually means a bunch of different things, depending on who it is that's saying it.
Doesn't actually mean abolish the whole police department, by the way. Someone explained it to me. one friend of mine shared with me that it actually just meant kind of more relegating funds to helping community-wise, still having the police, but actually making their job easier.
Yeah.
And they're not covering as much ground, which is actually frustrating for a police officer. So they would have a more specific skill set and job to do, as opposed to all of this broad stuff they have to cover all the time.
Certainly. And I think that that when I hear someone say defund the police, rather than reject or accept it, what I need to ask is, okay, what do you mean by that? And I think that that's the place that we have conversation. And honestly, I think conversation is the big one. One of the biggest problems is that we're all shouting at each other. People are shouting at each other on both sides of this conversation. And so we end up relegating this to a binary conversation where if you're not with me completely, you're against me. And so you're over there.
Add something there, because I was extremely scared. And one of my friends is watching. I think that he doesn't even know this. When I approached him, and I'm trying not to get into tears, I was scared to death to ask him some of the questions that I asked. And I want y'all to understand that, because sometimes I think you think that as pastors, we can just say whatever we want and we don't get nervous. And when it comes to difficult questions, I've been friends with this guy for over a decade, and we had never discussed race, ever. But I came to him and I said, brother, I need to ask you some questions. And I'll be honest with you, I might say some really dumb things when I ask them, and I don't mean to be offensive. Tell me if I am, because I want to correct it. But here it is. And I just laid it out for him. And we had a 2-day discussion on race and what was going on in his life, how his parents raised him. I mean, it was amazing stuff. And I learned so much. But guys, you have to get past your fear. You have to be able to say it's more important that I know the truth and that I love my brother than my fear is. Please proceed, Dan. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that we've got to learn to have compassion for people that disagree with us.
Yes. Yes.
We've got, so one of the things that I think is my role as a white man in this conversation is the fact that a lot of my Black brothers and sisters are quite frankly exhausted by having to explain the Black experience to people who aren't Black. And so Pastor Rob, I think that the point that you brought up, I think this is a friend of yours who's been friends with you for a long time. And so yeah. I think that's a healthy that's a healthy person to talk to about these things. But I also want to say that as a white man who's
don't have Black friends, you need to make them so you can start understanding some of this. That's a good place to start. Don't open the conversation up yet, but maybe just start making some Black friends naturally, and then maybe you'll get a chance to have that conversation down the road. Sorry, go ahead.
And maybe looking at people that you know who are, so as a white man in this conversation, one of the things that I'm trying to do is to use my voice to talk about what I understand and what I know of the Black experience, not because I haven't experienced it personally, so I can't be at that 401 senior class level of talking about the Black experience. But I can fill people in on the 101 of history of slavery, history of oppression, those kinds of things. And by doing that, hopefully take some of the weight off of my friends in the Black community from having to explain these things. So I think that we've got to, those of us who are beginning to understand these things need to make ourselves available to have honest dialogue with people who are still trying to figure it out, who maybe are afraid of offending people of color, their friends that they don't want to be offensive to, but need answers to these questions. And so that's one of the things that I try to make myself available for is come talk to me. I'm happy to answer these questions that you're worried about asking someone else. And we can dive in and look for those kinds of solutions together.
But like I would like to make myself open to anybody that maybe some of my white friends, maybe you don't have a close Black friend. I have a couple of them, and I would more than happy take your questions to them if you're not comfortable doing something like that in the initial stage of this, because if you don't know anybody that closely, it'll make it that much easier for you. And I don't mind. To be honest with you, I'm trying to learn as much as I can. So those questions channeled through me allow me to learn some more.
So what did you think? Is there anything you'd like to add to what was said today? If so, please let us know in the comments below. Also, if you like what you saw today, please hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss an episode. Finally, please join us every Monday at 4 p.m. for new issues regarding our culture.